Welcome. I'm Eleanor Slamba, Marketing and Community Support for ICAgile, and we have a very special webinar this evening. Salah Elliethy from Spark Agility is going to be leading us in covering ICAgile learning objectives with training from the back of the room techniques. And Salah, welcome. Would you like to introduce your topic, and we'll go from there?
Sure. So training from the back of the room is a concept became familiar with a couple years ago, and this is based on the work of Sharon Bowman. We'll start with an activity before I introduce myself. So I want to teach the concept using the actual concept. So one thing is we want to do a quick survey. How familiar are you with teaching from the back of the room? So if you're very familiar, 5 is very familiar. I know it like the back of my hand. And then 1, this is the first time I've heard of it. And then anything in between is, however number of fingers you can hold. So 3, 2, 1, go. All right, so we have Bill. He's very familiar with it. 2, and then 4. Okay. All right. So just a quick thing. I wanted you to think of a time when you participated in really effective training, and think of what made it effective, and how much of it do you remember, or can you retrieve, and then what have you applied from it? So those 3 things, and maybe we can just take a couple of minutes, and if you want to write it down, and then maybe we can share quickly just to one thing.
Okay. Anyone want to start?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I found when I talk less and listen more, it seems to help. And it's kind of a trick where it gets a different piece of their brain engaged when they're expressing to you. Kind of, you provide the guidance of the topic, but I think we win when the learner's actually doing the discovery instead of trying to cram it all in their brain with slide after slide.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anybody else? Nora or?
Yeah. Okay. What made it effective is that when people themselves, I think training from the back of the room uses a lot of games and things like that, where people do write or apply whatever they learn, sort of thing. So when that happens, the learning is more effective.
Mm-hmm.
you do what you learn, and
right.
then the recollection also is much higher when you do what you learn, and then that stays for a longer time.
Mm-hmm. Great.
And I'm a big fan of Agile games. I've attended some conferences, and when you're actually embodying the concepts based on a game, it's something you don't easily forget.
Right.
So true. I think in my certified Scrum Master class in 2007 that I took from Jess Sutherland and Joe Little, they actually played the XP game. It was one of those games they share on the internet or whatever. But I remember blowing up the balloons and getting feedback, and that was a powerful moment, not when Dr. Sutherland was speaking, but when we were doing and failing. When we were failing, I remember things.
Right.
I want to welcome Sue and Elliethy to the call. Thank you all for being here. Do you have comments about what's made your teaching effective, or sessions that you've learned effective in the past?
This is Elliethy. Are you all able to hear me okay?
Sounding good.
Yep.
Okay, great. I actually stumbled across a set of books from the Growing Agile group. I think they're in South Africa, 2 senior Agile coaches, and that's where I was introduced to training from the back of the room. And I started incorporating handouts with less slides if I was using a PowerPoint, handouts with blanks where they had to fill in the blank of principles or values or the things we were discussing. And I found the group was much more engaged. They retained more because they had to fill in the blank. And there is a game I like to play at the end of my training called Agile Jeopardy. JeopardyLabs.com is where you go and set this up. And so we kind of play a game to see what we've retained, and it further enforces what they've learned. So I've learned a lot by stepping back and letting them fill in the blanks of what we've learned. So I'm excited about what you're going to share with us here, and I'm looking forward to reading more on the book.
Great. All right. So did we miss anyone? Everyone?
Yeah, I'm here. It's Sue. It's Sue Johnston. What I found, I was on a train yesterday for 12 hours, and I read the Training from the Back of the Room book only because it was the last thing that I could grab before I left the house, and I had forgotten that I was coming on this call. And I got off that train so excited about, first of all, what I have been doing right and didn't know. And, you know, that all of that about make them fill in the blanks, make them do more of the talking, and also the stuff that I have been doing wrong or not back of the roomy, and ways that I can make it so much more alive by doing that. And I was just really very happy to see that. So, and then tonight this popped up again, and it was like, holy smoke.
Great.
Something.
you will keep me honest. All right. All right, so I guess which lead us to a good question. I mean, this is one of the questions that starting with is to ask ourselves when we are about to design or deliver a training, do I want them to hear it or do I want them to learn it, right? And it's the difference between this lecturing mode on one side of the spectrum and then, you know, a lot of interaction and games or activities are built into the training so that they actually learn the concepts, and the trainer basically is the one that can determine that balance, right? So you're not going to have all the whole training going through a lot of one game after the other, and at the same time you don't want it to be lecturing for the whole time, and it depends on a bunch of variables. So I want to share with you a few quotes here before we get started. So there's a couple quotes from Jay Cross. One is saying knowledge depends on engagement. Engagement is inseparable from empowerment. Empowerment means the opportunity to contribute. Learning is an act of participation. We are all lifelong learners. What that really mean is that in order for the learners to buy in, or anybody, that's why I'm saying, I was saying in the beginning, there's a lot of overlap between training from the back of the room and agile coaching, is that people have to buy in before or participate for the learning to become effective, and for them to be able to be open and retain the information. Another quote that I really like is, "Who dare to teach never cease to learn." So as trainers, we not only learn by teaching things, so we have to learn in order to teach, and we have to teach in order to learn, and it's a continuous cycle. So that's always something that, you know, if you're teaching or if you're a trainer, then it's hard to stop learning, because that's an ongoing thing. And then finally, there's the last quote here is, "We learn in context with others as we live and work," and then recognizing this fact is the first step to crafting effective learning experience, right? So learners don't learn just like a team. You know, think of this as the learners or the participants that you want to teach or to train are just like a team, right? So they go through the same stages as a team, and your job as a trainer is to try to build that relationship or these connections, so that they can feel safe to participate and learn from each other, which leads to, you know, having some agreement or ground rules in the beginning that they all can participate and build that. All right, so just a quick background. Again, my name is Salah, Elliethy. I am the founder and learning facilitator for Spark Agility. I also do some work as a managing partner for a company called Ready for Agile. I've been participating in a lot of communities, and mostly in the Virginia, DC area. I've been organizing a meetup called Agile Nova, and then finally the training from the back of the room. As I said earlier, I came to know about it a couple years ago from from Sharon Bowman, and actually before that, Bill, you mentioned the Lisa and Mike. I think they brought some of these concepts in their Agile coaching class as well.
Yeah.
So the outcomes of these sessions, or the objective at the end of, what's the goal at the end of the 40 minutes that we have together here, is list the 6 learning principles. So there are 6 learning principles that are called in the training from the back of the room called 6 trumps. And those are the ones we're going to be exploring. And then define the 4 C's map, which is basically just it's an instructional design model. And there's a lot of instructional design models out there. This is just one of them. But I found it really intuitive and very structured. And then finally, identify some activities. I'm not gonna, there's a bunch of activities. I'm not gonna go into each activities or how you can use them, because really the goal is to bring awareness and get your appetite going for the subject, and so you can research more. So some of the concepts from training of the back of the room came or are based on brain science, right? How adults learn, and there's a great book by John Medina called Brain Rules, and here's a quote from him saying, if you're in education, you're in the business of brain development, right? So if you're even if you're training or you're training people, you're in that business. And even if you're leading a corporation, whether you're a coach or you're a manager or work with coworkers, you're always trying to teach people about certain things. So you need to know how brain works, how brains work. So that's a really interesting fact here. So some of the challenges you mentioned earlier when we did this kind of a reflection exercise in the beginning is what makes training effective, right? Some of you said that, the retention, the games. So these are activities that are designed to get our attention, right? We are always, we're nowadays, our attention span is very, very little. And I was reading some research that our maybe attention span is around like 4 minutes or maybe even less. So we were trying to find a way, we're not going to be able to take a break every 4 minutes and come back, but we can build some activities or games that get that attention back on a regular basis. And that happens by engagement, right? So when we engage the participants or the learners, then we can get their attention, or we can at least maximize their span of attention over the period of time that we're training. And that the whole point, or the whole idea or the goal, is to have them retain this information, right? So knowledge without application is really useless. I mean, if the learners are not going to apply what they've learned, they will lose that quickly. They will lose what they learned quickly, and that will become really a waste of their time. So we're trying to get them to retain as much as possible by thinking about ways to apply it or map it to their way, the way they work, so that they can think of ways to apply it. So it's really interesting to see that there is an attempt for an Agile Manifesto for learning. I think that was put together by Sharon. Really, it shares a lot of concepts from the Agile Manifesto, and one of them is individuals and interactions over traditional methods of instruction. So if you're an instructor, the traditional methods of instructions are really not the way to go. Learning happened by the interaction, by the experience that is in the room. And your job is more of a learning facilitator, to bring that experience out and share share that experience across the learners. And then a second one is working brain-based strategies over adult learning theory, right? So as we saw from the quote by Dr. John Medina earlier, is if you are teaching, you are in the business of brain development, right? So we need to be familiar with how the brain works. Otherwise, the strategies that we're using are not going to be very effective. And then learner collaboration over rigid training design. So again, this is the learning happen just as the team happen. The knowledge sharing happens in the team through collaboration and interaction. Learning also happen through interaction from the participants. And then finally, responding to change over following a plan. And this means, in this context, it means that you can spend a lot of time designing training and how, but once you are on the ground and once you're in the actual classroom or the session, then you need to be able to inspect and adapt, basically based on the feedback you're getting from the learners, some cues from, how they, the questions, and be able to just change the way, the style. So with that, I'm gonna stop talking and have you do some quick exercise here. So I want you, if you have a piece of paper or a blank piece of paper or just an index card, to draw 6 large boxes. 6 large boxes. And this is where we're going to be writing and drawing the 6 trumps. So the first picture is a picture of a shoe. In the first box. Doesn't have to be perfect. And as best as you can. So this really to remember that movement trumps sitting, right? Movement trumps sitting. Nice. She got that's close enough. Yeah. So movement trumps sitting. So that there's research about moving around and standing up, at some intervals of time, actually breathing, oxygen to the brain. I can't remember the exact numbers, but I think it said that from 20% your learning increased to about 80%, the retention, just by getting oxygen to the brain. So you want to design the brain.
Good practice.
Yeah. And yeah, so to have the learners stand, stretch, walk around, and they can do this as part of the class, as part of the learners, because obviously you have limited amount of time and you want to try to, teach them all the things that they need to know about. All right, so the second box, draw a picture of talking or a mouth. I think this is easier than the shoe. All right, so this says talking trumps listening. And it's basically, having people actually talk about what they learn, and not just continuously being talked at. All right, so the third one.
They're all good, but that's a good one.
The camera. So the third one is a camera. This is just a box and a circle in the middle would be sufficient. So images trumps words, right? So we've all sat in those meetings or training where there's a lot of slides, and the slides are crowded with all this text, right? And it's just too hard to process, right? So we want to have fewer words and more images, because that's how actually we learn better, by seeing things, vision is a big factor in retention or remembering things. All right, so the fourth box is a pencil or a pen.
Writing trumps.
So writing trumps reading. So a lot of that's what we're doing right now, actually. We're just writing things, we're drawing and we're writing so that we can retain some of this better. All right, so stopwatch or a clock. And then shorter trumps longer. So designing your training, let's say you have a 2 days training or 2 days class, you want to break those sessions down to shorter periods of time, maybe take a break, and even within those sessions, you want to build in a lot of interactive activities.
I love that one because it reminds me of lean, like, little slaw, like shorter batch, flow better.
Batches.
That's awesome.
All right, so final one is just Legos or colors. And this is different trumps same. So changing things around makes the participants or learners more engaged.
Salah, we're going to make sure Samar can unmute herself to have a question about the images.
Sure.
If you put your cursor, Samar, on the little microphone and click it so it doesn't have a red line. There we go. We should be able to hear you now. You going to
There's a question?
talk to us? Oh. Yeah, you're unmuted, but we still can't hear you. Is it something you can type into the chat? Yeah.
Oops. Slide ahead. Okay.
If I see her question pop up into the chat, I'll read it. And Samar, you can try hopping out of Zoom and back in. For sometimes that helps. Okay. Back to you,
We can all
Salah.
breathe deeply while this is happening and expand our mental ability to stretch.
Yeah, I would.
Need more oxygen.
Yeah.
I wanted to
Stand up and stretch.
Images. I thought that was good.
Yeah.
More
Okay, so the question is, but words are good for reference. So images better than words, but you need that one or two words to kind of hang the image onto to lock in the concept, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the word trumps is just like when we, it's like over, just in, when we say in the Agile Manifesto, working software over, this is just this is something that is not necessarily that we're saying just only images, but just less words and more images based on the topic.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello? Oh, we can hear you now.
Oh,
Yay.
finally. Okay, hi. All right, thank you. Yes, that's what I meant. That makes sense.
Right.
All right. Moving on here. All right. So now that we have, so this is basically what we just went through is the why, or the value proposition, or how we can. Why is it important to have these activities built in? So think always about the 6 trumps when you're designing. So now the how we can design the actual material. There's a tool called the 4 C's map, right? And this is an instructional design tool that basically show you as an instructor or the trainer and the learners where their instruction is going, and get there together, right? So obviously in the beginning, when you're using a new instructional design tool, you are you're more conscious of the different steps, you know, and we're going to talk about what each C means. But after a while, after doing it for a while, it becomes really, it just becomes natural, right? Just like everything.
Well, right off the bat, this seems relevant to ICAgile since we have the learning roadmap, and we want people to be visualizing themselves as one point on a longer journey.
Right. Right. So, okay. All right. So the first C is basic connections, right? So when we start with the, you know, when we start in the beginning training session, there is this point of time where we want to build that connection, form that connection, and the connection is 4 different things, right? So there is what they already know. Most of the time we assume that people come in with a clean slate, which may be true about certain topics, but they can connect those to things that they already know, right? So quick start activities that, like a quick start, what can, you know, when, like we did in the beginning, what would a good effective session have, right? And then connect that, okay, you already know that because you've experienced it before, right? And then what they will learn or want to learn. That's another thing that we can have a round robin or go around. Usually I get people to stand up in a circle and just to have everyone say one thing that they want to take away from this, right? If they didn't get from this training, would keep them up at night. So they would have that mechanism, and we can also capture that on a flip chart, on a wall. And then connection, the most importantly, connection to each other, right? Because they really, if you're just like, this is the first time you meet people in the training, you know, we assume that they don't know each other. And even if they were in a private company where you're going to deliver training in a private company and their employees in that company, don't assume that they already know each other, right? And knowing each other, not just their name, but a deeper level of knowing each other. So that help create that safe learning environment, right? So the safe learning environment is like, you know, make yourself comfortable. You know, this is your home, and we've seen that with many of the effective training that we've been to, is have a ground rule, or what is a good environment for us as learners to establish from the get-go. And then the instructor is usually also, they need to know the instructor. And again, that's building that relationship with the learners. And very similar to someone who's leading a team or coaching a team, they have to establish that relationship so that the team members or the learners can feel that they can ask questions or approach the instructor, or they can bring up something that they don't know without feeling that you know, sense of embarrassment or shy about it. So these are some of the activities here: quick start, top takeaway, standing survey. And I already mentioned the standing survey is having them stand, maybe create 2 different walls and 2 different flip charts, and have them people who are new to the subject and people who have experience in the subject, and then they write down what they want to learn. And for those who actually also familiar with the subject, what are they looking? And then you can see some patterns, and they kind of switch in that way to see how you can, you know, maybe partner up some of them in that people who are familiar with something with people that are new to the topic. All right, so the second C here is the concepts, right? So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but this is really the main point here, is that multisensory. We learn information in multisensory ways, right? We hear things, we see it, we discuss it, reflect it. So building that into the delivery of the content is really important, to have them hear it, see it, and actually have discussed it. So some of the activities here is some myth or fact games. So one of that is that you create some index cards and you put it on a table where they can look at them one by one and discuss whether this is a myth or a fact about the topic, right? Or you can even take it a step further, have them create cards, write statements on index cards, and then they can look at it and then decide as a group whether this is a myth or a fact. Any thoughts, questions so far?
What you just said about myth or fact reminds me of build your own Scrum. If anyone's done that kind of cut and paste tool, that definitely involves, now that I think about it, pretty much all the trumps you have.
Right.
That's cool.
The only limitation is it's focused on one particular methodology.
Yeah, right. I think that's why I mentioned in the beginning that there's a lot of overlap between this concepts and some of the Agile coaching. So a lot of this, as you know, there's Agile games, or there's a lot of things that we do in Agile that is really relevant and applicable to this as well. So what you have that, so that you have the connection, you have the the concept, teaching the concept, and then the concrete practice. Now they need to actually practice what they've learned. So they practice that skill doing some type of an active review, or teach the skill or to others, right? And the best way to learn is actually to teach, right? So you want them to pair up with someone, or maybe for the larger group, everyone say something that they have felt or have learned that they can share with everyone else. So teach backs is one of the activities, usually very, it doesn't require a lot of setup, and it's basically having people pair up and teach each other something that they've learned through just questions. And then the conclusions is the final step here in this framework, is that the summarizing what they've actually learned, evaluated, and most importantly celebrated, and then create action plans. So this is what we talked about earlier, that how can you apply what you learn in real life? We have to make that connection, right? And it's not, so this framework is not just for the overall training, but it's actually for every topic that you're going to teach. You can use it through each of those to think through it, right? Not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to do that for every little, for every one learning objectives, but the ones that you think that this is really a need to know. So learning logs is one of them. Is basically in the material, you could have some blank sheets for them to write down some of the learning that we've covered so far, right? And what are the most important concepts that they can take away and apply, and then how they're going to apply it in their work. All right, so some ICAgile learning objective. There's a couple of examples that I put out here, but this is one sample or example of designing a topic, right? So you have these 4 C's, 4 connections. So I'm gonna ask you to, in that index card or that blank sheet of paper, turn it around, and maybe on the other side, have 4 boxes, draw 4 boxes, just like we have on the screen here, and put connections, concepts, concrete practice, conclusions. All right, so content. So in the top of the page, if you there's a topic, right? So what is the topic that you are about to teach, right? So what is the topic? And then the audience are important because you need to know your audience so that you can figure out the delivery mechanism. Are you going to be doing a lot of games? Are they going to be open and receptive of a lot of games, or you want to tune it down and maybe go have a more balanced approach to, as we mentioned earlier, more lecturing built in and some activities. And then the time for the overall time, and then learning outcomes. I usually start with the learning outcomes. Really, what is it that we're trying to get out of the session or out of the training, right? And a lot of time, you see objectives, learn something or understand something or know something, but these are really words that are not observable, right? You can't observe these behaviors. So you need some verbs that you can actually observe that learning, that actually the learning took place. So identify or define, list, explain. These are things that you can observe. Summarize, you can ask them, or demonstrate something, right? So these are things that you can observe during that. So the formula is learning outcomes is action word, observable learning behavior, plus your concept skill that you're trying to teach, right? So as we mentioned earlier, if you remember the first slide, the session outcomes list the 6 trumps, right? So I hope now you're able to list them. And that's how you would test or make sure that the learner actually walked away with what the intent was. So under each of those, there's content and learners activities. So let's see an example here. So for instance, the topic is Agile Manifesto. So one of the fundamentals of Agile class teach new team members or new people who are new to Agile about the Agile Manifesto, right? So the values, the principles. So the activity would, we have the time. So one of the learning outcomes, so let's say identify, actually this is supposed to be Agile Mindset. So the Agile Mindset, so identify the 3 characteristics of the Agile Mindset, right? So we have some, you've already taught them the concept of what the Agile Mindset is, maybe, and then you have them identify 3 concepts, right? This is at the end of that, they would be able to identify 3 concepts or characteristics of the Agile Mindset. So one activity here, the connection, is a standing survey. We have the 4 values and 12 principles. Maybe I'm sorry, this is a little bit confusing here. So this is actually Agile Manifesto. It should be identify the values of the Agile Manifesto. Okay, so concrete practice is the active review of the Agile values and principles, and then conclusion, summarize action plan. So what have we learned, right? So there's an activity called tossing the ball from one learner to the other, and then ask them what they've learned and what will they do with it, right? So what is it how are they going to apply this in their environment? Yeah, this is the actual. Yeah, so this is another example. So some of the activities here that we've mentioned, and again, I'm gonna let you read through some of this, and then we can open it up for more questions. So one of the activities, the method fact game, we mentioned that. Some of it is teach backs or demonstration, role plays, ball toss, and action plans. So I will give you a minute to read through some of these activities, and then if you have like some questions or specifically about one of those or anything that we've covered, we can have a quick Q&A, because I know time is about to run out of time.
Salah, while people are reading through, I'll just mention that one very powerful thing I experienced once was when, at the end of a training, we were asked to write a letter
Yeah.
to ourselves, and the trainer kept it and mailed it to us a few months later to see if we kept our commitments. So I got a letter from myself 3 months ago in the mail.
Yeah. I used to do that all the time at Sue, and it's really interesting. They often will write back to you again to say thank you very much for doing that.
Wow. Can you block yourself? If you don't want to check email.
I imagine you can just not get your mail.
So Salah, we're hearing from Nick in the chat box that he's hit all of these in his Agile testing course and is going great guns with this high activity level in the course. So what would you tell somebody as like a next level, like an intermediate or advanced level of this stuff, of how to really stretch?
Yeah, I think so. It's really a matter of trying to figure out how to teach the class, right? The need to know information within the time allocated, right? So we have to basically, what is the need to know of what we're going to about to teach, and then how to vary the activity level. And be able to test that retention throughout the training throughout the class. But I would suggest going, if really the next level is to really get more deeper into how the brain actually works and keep up with some of the research that have been available for a long time. And now there's a lot more research that is happening. So one of it, I'm going to give references at the end. The training from the back of the room is one of them. There's also brain science and then brain rules. And then there is also, you're familiar with the work of Tyagi also. He has a lot of material about how to structure a learning experience that is inducive for the learners and gain that retention. All right. This is actually for a takeaway. I would try it when, after this, I can send the slides to Eleanor to share with you, to try to actually build that structured approach. In what is the topic, who's the audience, and then the learning outcomes that I want, and maybe each of those try to fill with activities and content.
Salah, it's Sue. I just have something. I've got big sheets on my wall. I'm trying to develop a new course now, and I've blocked it off in 20-minute intervals, and I'm using almost that very framework to do it. What do I want them to learn? What do I want them to do? And it seems to be making the creation of the course just fall in place.
Very cool. I like that, Sue.
It's really nice. It takes up a lot of room on your wall, but once you've done it.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of things that we didn't address. I mean, again, this is like a 3 days worth of material that we are trying to touch we just scratched the surface. So I think the goal was to get some awareness, to get us familiar with the concepts. And for those of you who are already familiar with this, maybe that was a quick refresher. And really the next step is to figure, maybe we have subsequent webinars to dig deeper into certain areas. There's a lot of work there's a lot of articles or presentation that you can research on or look at Sharon's website. And if there's also, I have specific guides. If you like, I can definitely share it with you as well.
Yeah, I noticed you have a lot of links to her SlideShare presentations, and she has really detailed ones. So that's a great resource. Nick and Janet, thanks for joining us. It's terrific to have you on the call. We're in the chat box around Agile testing and specifically games for Agile testing. And Nick is really happy to share some of his materials in these last few minutes, if we can bring in that. So
Yeah, hi everybody.
hi, Nick.
Yeah, happy to show for a couple of minutes some things I've learnt from applying training from the back of the room. If everyone's happy to hear that, I can do that. Yeah.
Well,
Thumbs up.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. So I learned about the book earlier this year because I found that it's courses. It's hard to get engagement in the traditional way. Very boring courses and stuff like that. So I read the book and I applied it to my Agile testing course, and it really gave it a big lift. I'm telling you, it was something like out of this world. How it improved the engagement. And so I found it's hard to do all the things that you want to do that Sharon mentions. You have to sort of pick and choose what makes sense in the context as well. So sometimes you may not fit in a particular type of activity. You may have to do lecture style anyway to get through material, but you can follow that up with like a ball toss at the end to get people out of their seats speaking and get oxygen flowing to the brain, inclusive 20% oxygen flow to the brain when you do that. So so all those things that Salah mentioned as well are all great. So can I share my screen here? Is that possible? Yeah.
I think so. I just want to thank Salah. The 4 C's
Yeah.
and that way of kind of distilling as a quick checklist mentally is really important. And it seems that what this did for me is just make sure that there's no going back. You know, there's no excuse for traditional teaching anymore when we know this works better than the traditional.
Yeah, I wanted to second that. And Salah is very helpful. You know, I looked at this and I have the book rotting on my iPad, and the 1 hour with you is so much better than trying to read the book for me. So thank you for sharing. It was awesome.
Oh, thank you. No, so just one final thing, so that this is a summary, and again, I'll send this to Eleanor to share with you. And this is the reference that I was talking about. So these are the fine reference. But I do, just to comment on what Nick said, I do agree that, you know, sometimes that's why it's helpful to know the audience, right? Because, you know, it's just like knowing the team. You know, what is it that you want to introduce, and then responding to change over following that plan, right? So if the audience or the participants seem there's a lack of engagement, or there's something you need to change a style, and be ready to do that. All right. So how do I grant control, or are you going to do that, Eleanor?
Well, I think you have a button that says stop screen share, maybe.
Let's see. Oh, pause. There's pause. Oh, this is pause. Let's see.
On mine, I see a share screen button that's very tempting at the bottom.
Why didn't you just push it?